Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to, can you believe it, episode 21 of Combe TV. It's a bit warm, isn't it? I've got doors open, windows open, everything, just to try and keep some kind of fresh air coming in. But I hope you got yourselves ready. I hope you've got your drink at the ready, dilly. And tonight's a first for Combe TV because actually we're going live in two locations, Facebook Live and on the circuit's YouTube channel as well. So hopefully that's all working for everybody. Apparently we will see the comments coming in from both, and it'll tell us whether they've asked questions from one or the other. Evening, Steve Jackman. Good to see you here. We've got plenty of you coming in, and it's just about right that I'm waffling for a minute because our guest here this evening, bless him, has just literally come from another live show. He does the reverse to what I'm doing. As you know, I go straight to another show after this one. But our guest is just sort of taking a breather in the green room at the back. Evening, Tim Perry, dilly. Thank you so much for all of you that watched and commented on the sort of bespoke live that we did on, what day was it? Thursday, wasn't it? From the circuit, when it looks like we've got something that's going to work on July the 4th. It's going to be better than we showed you there, but we're going to be able to not just bring you the commentary, but also some footage as well. Spooner in orange, Dawesy, waffle, never. Yeah. Now, you're going to notice, and well done, Emma, you beat me to it. I was about to say it, is that I'm missing my right-hand man tonight for a very good reason. He turns 40 today, has Tom Davis. So Tom Davis probably can't even see now, bless him. He's probably so drunk from celebrating his 40th birthday. Happy birthday, Tom. Good man. I know that I sent through a little gift for you, and I know that you've received it, and I hope you're having a great day. Sorry it's in lockdown and we can't all be with you, but I know that everybody will wish you happy birthday. Thank you for everyone that's flooding in. Darren Duffield, Nigel Forrest from Alton Park, Nick Holmes, Matt Parr, good evening, my friend. Neil Thomas, Neil here from Tenby. So they're all flushing in. Right. What of our guest tonight? You can already see it. It is James Cameron from Mission Motorsport. And this, for me, was I had to get James on at some point. I've had the privilege of working with him a few times. And that included the last time I properly saw him was him being the special guest for the Caterham Graduates Racing Club Awards do. I have to tell you, and I know he can hear me, and I'm not saying it because he can, but he's one of the best after-dinner speeches I've seen. Absolutely. Anybody of you out there have got any requirement, not only is he brilliant, but you know it is a really deep, heartfelt message and an amazing support that he's doing. Now, what of this man? Let me just make sure that we introduce him properly. Well, James Cameron, having served 17 years in the Royal Tank Regiment, I'm not allowed to call him Tank Commander anymore, as I keep doing. James returned from his last tour of Afghanistan in 2011, and he was determined to help those whose lives he had seen himself impacted by military service. As such, Mission Motorsport was created, and this charity has gone on to become one of the most successful of its kind within the UK and beyond. The Forces Motorsport charity, Mission Motorsport, has lived by the same mission statement since day one: race, retrain, recover. He was already a grade A race instructor, and his enthusiasm and vision to harness the power of this sport for the wider good drives the organisation to this day. The clue's in the title. His determination to put duty of care for those in need first sets the tone for everything the charity does. He embodies post-traumatic growth and works hard to promote the same in others. He actually started racing himself in Germany, and he's raced in the UK and all over the world, including one that I thought was really interesting, was partnering with the likes of Mike Wilds, that many of you I'm sure will have heard of, in a Mazda in Britcar. He and the team also have worked many times with someone I call a nutter, and have done several times, called Terry Grant, the stunt driver, that I've had the terrifying pleasure to work with on the mic. And together, they've brought us such things as the live action arena show at Autosport International. If any of you managed to make that, probably the last activity we had in motorsport back in January, they were there putting on a phenomenal show yet again. As I say, I've had the pleasure of interfacing with James at many events where I would be on the mic, and he and his team would be providing charity high-speed laps including our beloved Castle Combe circuit, and including some of you that are watching will have actually not just been in the passenger seat, but some of you may have been there able to help raise money, taking your race cars there as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if someone who brings together serving our country, helping others who have served our country, and his unbridled love of motorsport and how much this sport we all adore so much can help each other to help others doesn't qualify as an inspiration, I don't know what does. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure he's cringing in the background, but I give you my good friend, James Cameron. James, I know you hate it when that happens, but I had to do that. It's, how are you, my friend?
I'm all right. If I can book you to do that sort of warm-up routine with Mrs. Cameron, that would be great. She doesn't tend to talk about me in such glowing terms. But thank you, mate. That's really kind. And we have actually spent a lot of time alongside each other, both at those amazing days at Castle Combe and also race weekends dotted about the place as well. It's amazing how you run into folk in the motorsport world. It is a small community, and all the better for it. It's great.
And in fairness, that's what you kind of cottoned onto, wasn't it, with the world of motorsport? I know it was something you loved and were already doing, but you actually worked out, hang on, this can be harnessed. And that's what Mission Motorsport has done. Yeah, no, I mean, I sometimes get asked, is there sort of, was there a master plan, would you have imagined, right at the very beginning where you are now? And the answer is no. But it seems extraordinary. Just, I complain. It's a ridiculous idea. If anybody ever thinks about starting a charity, I would urge you not to, for God's sake. It's, and I very much thought that actually at the time, and it pushed quite hard against the whole business of whether what was needed to meet a need. The answer was yet another service charity. I firmly didn't believe that. But doing things as a charity means that ultimately you're held accountable to a set of principles which you've set out and against which you are weighed. And it gives people who give you money confidence that the money is then spent doing exactly the things which you've sort of said on the tin. There's the right transparency in place. And to be honest, if you try and do anything like that in the recovery space in any kind of a different way, then you're not open to scrutiny in the way it could be. And so it's the right way to handle money as much as anything else, to be able to allow us to have the greatest impact. But that race, retrain, recover thing, which you caught on, that kind of was, the first time I was kind of thinking about doing this actually was in Afghanistan, or doing something, that became Mission Motorsport was in Afghanistan, because I went away with some really amazing offers of doing stuff. And I'd always use those sort of things to raise money for service charities. And so the likes of, Stephen Doherty at Track Group had made an offer, Paul Golding, again, sort of Lotus community kind of things. I had some extraordinary opportunities to be able to do, to be able to put things together, which you could then parcel up and you raise money for service charities. And I've done lots of that all the way through my career, really, in spare capacity. And you sort of use that, the difference between motorsport and the military in order to present something that's quite cool. So you can auction off sort of military prizes in a motorsport audience and kind of vice versa in order to raise a bit of money. But in Afghanistan in sort of 2010, 2011, funnily enough, where I met one of our trustees. So one of our trustees is I met in a hedgerow in Helmand province, somewhere, just north of Lashkar, and which was pretty extraordinary. And we were in Two Paras area, and I'd climbed down off the top of the wagon to go and have a look, because there was a patrol that was coming across this field towards us, and sort of stepped out, and I knew the young officer who was sort of commanding the patrol, so I sort of climbed down to go and have a look at him. But he had this bloke in the patrol, and these are paras. So this is 2 para. It's the 2nd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment. Big lads carrying a lot of kit, all the rest of it. And there was one sort of in the middle of them, also carrying lots of kit, but he didn't have a weapon. He was carrying a Gray Nichols cricket bat. And I'd sort of, and when I first spotted it, my driver pointed it out and said, "Are we giving away cricket stuff to the Afghans now?" Which is something that has been done. That love of sport is actually, it's a lovely way to bring people together.
And actually, the Afghans are quite fond of cricket. They're better at another game. I can't remember the name of it, but effectively it involves galloping around on very fast ponies, spearing the head of an enemy, which you flick across the arena. It's sort of version of polo, but you get to use somebody. Yes, exactly. But you get to use something more entertaining. And he said, "Boss, are we giving away cricket bats now?" And we sort of had a laugh about, what a great idea it is getting the Afghans to play cricket in an area that's full of IEDs. And he'd sort of got close, and it was just one bloke with a cricket bat, and it wasn't a brand new cricket bat. It clearly seen a bit of service. So I climbed down to go and see who it was, and it was a guy who was the Padre. So he's a fully ordained Church of England Padre, a guy called Anthony Felton White, and a lot of the people watching this will actually have known him or have come across him one way or another, either through Revelation Racing or anything else which he did. But when Top Gear did The Fastest Faith, and it was a bit of fun that they did. They had a competition in one of the things. I think they had they had a Roman Catholic vicar. They had a Church of England, which clearly was Anthony. They had a rabbi. They had a guy who was Rastafarian, something or other, and so a bunch of different, and an imam, and all the rest of it. And they all raced around the Top Gear track to see which was fastest. And Anthony won by a mile because he's a complete ringer, because he's a huge petrol head. He raced all sorts of things, anything he can get his hands on. He's currently racing a really quick little MG. He's been doing Austin Sevens for a long time. He's in Ben Collins's book, The Man in the White Suit.
Okay, yeah.
Which was actually the first thing Ben Collins did with that sort of Top Gear crew, which was actually Hammond did it with a bunch of people they took this vicar who they'd literally just done the programme with to Snetterton for the 2CV 24-hour race, which, as you remember, he used to sit in August every year, and without fail, despite the fact it's, within 3 miles of the driest postcode in the UK, and in August, it would absolutely just pee it down. All of these 2CVs would be screaming around, "Oh, look at that, thank you." Yeah,
we knew someone would know it.
There we go. Well, and if anyone's going to know it, it's going to be Fran. There you go. That's awesome. He'd had an altercation in the wee small hours with another racer, and limped the car back to the pits. Got out of it, and the mechanics were kind of all over his car. And then the bloke who he hit came up the pit lane and into the pits. And it's really interesting because there's different versions of the story. So there's the version of the story which is in Ben Collins's book. There's the version of the story which Anthony will tell you publicly. And I think we did a podcast recently, and he did sort of his version of events on it. And then there's the version of events which everybody else tells you, or Ben Collins will tell you in an unguarded moment, which is Anthony Felton White wearing a race suit, clearly that had a dog collar, was a black race suit with a dog collar.
Oh, wow.
Clearly a man in the cloth. Yeah, so this guy coming into his pit garage and acted quickly to thump him before he got thumped, and ended up with the mechanics pulling them apart. Anyway,
wow.
So you can see why Anthony and I, this bloke who I just met with a cricket bat, sort of got on. And funnily enough, he's one of our trustees now. But he's an absolutely amazing bloke. But it was always about the journey, that race, retrain, recover piece, as opposed to, we all love motorsport, but it's the impact that it actually has on our lives and our communities and where it can take you was the thing that we were always interested in. So I probably didn't think it was going to look like it looks right now, but that race, retrain, recover thing has been there from the outset, because that's always been what it's always been about.
Well, that's the key thing. I mean, you look at motorsport, and there's so many roles available to people within it that it kind of makes sense. This isn't Mission Motorsport is not just about getting, to use the overgeneralized phrase, injured troops to become racing drivers. That's not it by any stretch. That could be, some of them might go that direction, but there's so many other things. I know that you put a whole load of people working in with JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, and all sorts of other bits and pieces over the years. But equally, the thing that I've loved about Mission Motorsport, it isn't just about, right, let's support them, let's love them, let's give them counselling. It is literally, no, let's give them that, sure, but let's get them so they can stand up on their own 2 feet and have a whole new life. And that, for me, is what has rung through from Mission Motorsport.
And they, thank you. I mean, and that is exactly what it's always been about since the beginning. There is a tendency that that is infectious, which is service charities tend to talk about the need, and therefore, in order to articulate that need, they will throw a magnifying glass on those at the end of the scale who have had an appalling time and have had terrible things which have happened to them, which has properly knocked them down, and they need real support to be able to really become functional members of society. And that's an entirely understandable narrative, but it's really not our narrative. I mean, because to us there is a vast human potential which is there, which frankly we paid for as taxpayers. You've taken these people and insulated them from the world in order to take them to go and do something which is quite extraordinary on the nation's behalf. You invest a huge amount of time and love and history and all of the values and all the rest of it, which you get in the military, is not something which normal companies have got the time or the interest in instilling in their employees. And when they reach the end of their service career, they've still got an awful lot to offer. A lot of that is transferable. There's bits of it that are absolute gems. And funnily enough, it's at times when the chips are really down and you look around at who in society is facing up to the problems, who's taking it on, who's standing up for those less able to be able to do it. And certainly the veteran community, the service leaver community, people look for the armed forces in times of difficulty. They've got an awful lot to give. And so, I mean, you mentioned Jaguar Land Rover. I mean, since first Invictus Games, we helped run the driving challenge for that. And JLR had done something quite extraordinary. They'd invested a huge amount of time and capital into this thing, and nobody knew what it was going to be like. I mean, the Invictus Games came about because Prince Harry went off the script. He went across to the States and participated in a thing called the Warrior Games, which fantastic thing the Americans have been doing, and gradually it got bigger, and it stopped being just Americans, and they'd invite us along, the Canadians, I think the Australians, and all the rest of it. And this Warrior Games had got bigger. Harry went across, and the American press really love him, and were absolutely astonished to find somebody who was a prince, who they expected to behave in a certain way, just being incredibly at ease with the blokes, joining in, playing seated volleyball and all of the rest of it, and having a laugh and having proper banter and all of the rest of it with the guys. And he just clicked, and it didn't really matter of what nation they were. He's astonishing with people. His emotional intelligence is extraordinary. And it comes from the journey which he personally has taken himself. And so the American press just loved it, utterly focused on him. And there was lots of it that was also spilling out internationally. And there's a guy called David Norris, who's an absolutely smashing bloke. And he was a full colonel, worked in Ministry of Defence, and he was in charge of disabled and adaptive sport. And David had told us, it happened, and it was on a Thursday. He was eating his cornflakes in the morning, watching the news. And Prince Harry was on there, and it was the Warrior Games closing ceremony. And Prince Harry got up, and instead of saying, thank you very much, it's been wonderful coming, we're looking forward to returning here, for the next event, he said, thank you very much, it's been absolutely wonderful, it's inspired us to do other things, and we look forward to inviting all of you to a similar event in the UK very soon. And David Norris, spat his cornflakes into his bowl. Bloody hell. This thing called the Invictus Games came out of it. It didn't have a name. There was no concept. There was nothing like that. And JLR had really lent into it to make it happen. And on the back of it, we then had the opportunity to say to them, look, well, let's help you to do what you want to do, which is to access this pool of talent. And there were lots of things that they were doing completely inadvertently, which were preventing them from accessing it, because they were offering great jobs, but then they were screening by prior industry experience or a degree, and they were getting rid of an awful lot of military candidates. They just weren't even seeing them. So the work which we started with them back really beginning of 2015 has seen over 1,000 service leavers and veterans find their way into employment with Jaguar Land Rover. And that, when times are good and things are going up, is fantastic. When you find yourself in a sort of situation like now, actually, you're potentially helping some people who are being displaced and helping them find other places to go. And you're also helping to highlight some perhaps novel and unusual areas that are in huge growth, that desperately need people of quality and people of their qualities. It's up to us to kind of, find those and then illuminate those pathways and help people to be able to follow them, because having a job is so important. It's particularly, when you're younger and you've got a family to support and all the rest of it. If you tick job, then lots of other things kind of fall into place and other things then become manageable. But without that, it can be really quite difficult.
But in fairness, you guys take that step further, because it's one thing to get a job, it's another to be on a career path. I've seen a lot of the guys and girls that have been with you guys, is that they're not just getting a job and you're putting a sticky plaster over it, you're actually getting them a career. I mean, all the time, whenever I'm involved with you guys, I keep having the song and the mantra going through my head of give a man a fish and they'll eat for a day, teach him how to fish and they'll eat forever. And that just rings.
Like a TVR, he'll never get to where he's going. All of that, yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tim Laidell is going to kill me.
So, it definitely rings true. And add to it, by the way, is that, my dad is ex Air Force Royal Engineer on Queen's Flight. My father-in-law is ex-military as well. My mum was a parachute packer in the RAF as well. In fact, my father-in-law was a zobbit, as my dad calls him. And, what I've seen is that the work ethic, down to the training and the discipline and everything, the work ethic, the values, the ongoing discipline that these military people have compared to myself, probably included. I've always said I can't live up to my dad's work ethic, and that's been instilled in him from the military.
No, it's I'm always a bit uncomfortable about making generalizations, but I think there are some things which you can generalize about. And those who've joined the military at a young age are not generally motivated by money. They've not done it to get rich, and instead they're doing something which has other reasons to go to work, as opposed to just the pay packet you're going to get at the end of the month. There's a sense of pride and esprit de corps and all the rest of it. And so helping those kind of people to continue to scratch those itches, which are important to you. And sometimes it's really obvious, and sometimes it's not so much. I mean, we're all British and it's all, very understated, our sort of way in which we think about things. But it's a really powerful drug to think that you're doing something that's making an impact, a positive impact in the lives of others. And when you talk to soldiers, that sort of thing just doesn't drop off and go away at the moment when you get out. And that transitional period is really difficult, because you're leaving one culture which is very not like the outside world, and then trying to establish yourself in something else. And there are some big differences between the two, and it means that they present themselves and they look weird because they use a different language to everybody else. So, and all of the HR tools which companies have at their disposal are typically bloody awful for establishing service talent from service not talent, because they all exist. There is a spectrum of people. But the standard HR tools to establish, who is absolutely up here with, who is down here, just are opaque really when
computer says no.
And the Jaguar Land Rover thing was a perfect example. A computer sift applied at an early level. If you didn't have certain things, then your CV wasn't read by a human being. But if that CV was read by a human being who doesn't know the military back to front, then it's very difficult to understand a service CV, because firstly, it's written in the first person. And in your service career, you write about yourself in the first person, never. It just simply doesn't feature. So from the first moment of training, you're instead talking about we. And when you start to go up the scale, you do contribute towards writing annual reports and writing progress reports on people, recommendations for promotion, things like that. Never for yourself. It's always for other people. And you're always commenting against how they are benefiting the team, because the ultimate goal is that we. So it means, writing down your CV in terms that are glowing about how wonderful you were at something is something that's incredibly alien to anyone who's served. So, I commanded a squadron in the Royal Tank Regiment. I was very fortunate, sort of did it twice. Yeah, there's a picture behind us. There's an Afghan one. There you go.
Wow.
And for me to say that, yeah, you know, so I've got a picture of that lot in 1917 in France. You know, same squadron, same tank names, same all the rest of it. Incredible history. And for me to say that I'm the best squadron commander of that squadron that the Royal Tank Regiment has ever seen since 1917. I was miles better than the guy ahead of me. The bloke behind me, you know, had a hell of an act to follow. I was head and shoulders the best squadron leader in the regiment at the time across everybody else. And the lads in the squadron would have been shocking if it hadn't been for my personal brand of inspirational, you know, get up and go that lifted them up every day. And so, I mean, it's just horrible. I mean, it sounds horrific. And you wouldn't and couldn't and all of the rest of it talk in ways like that. Therefore, it's very alien to when you're sat in an interview and somebody says to you, you know, when was the moment when you had pivotal effect that you know, your influence, all the rest of it was the thing that held things up. And the first word out of your mouth inevitably is we did this, you know, we did that. What are your achievements? And you say, well, you know, in so-and-so, we did this. And you can't help it. And so, you know, the poor HR buggers who are looking in at this, that's not their world. So they, you know, it makes it really difficult to kind of see through that to going, actually, this bloke is exceptional because of X, Y, and Z. You know, this girl is clearly brilliant because she's not talking about herself. She's just talking about, you know, what the organization of which she was part of did. And then, of course, there's the language. So like any trade, you develop, you know, acronyms and language and all the rest of it. And the military is a sort of exaggerated version of that with a history that goes back quite a long way and is full of weird stuff. And also it's very different between services. So I am hopeless with naval ranks, positions, all of the rest of it, because I've had very little exposure to it. So if somebody starts talking to me about, you know, sort of fish head stuff, then I have to go and grab, you know, one of my naval colleagues who can then come along and comment. But army stuff, generally, I'm okay on. So, yeah, that's very difficult for them to understand too. And for the blokes, they don't speak industry HR speak. So they'll apply for a job. But whether they actually know what lies behind doing that job and what that job actually feels like, what it involves, they are throwing a dartboard into the dart, throwing a dart into the dart, just hoping it'll hit the right dartboard, let alone where on the dartboard it'll hit. So,
well, I've always said, you know, in part of my open doors training, when it's public speaking and presentation skills and the media training, all those kind of things, is that the hardest thing for us to do is to stand up and present about ourselves, to sell ourselves. It feels uncomfortable. It feels awful. And that's just for us in the normal world. Then put it, like you say, that those that are we, and it's all about the team and it's about the country and it's about this, to suddenly have to do that. I don't think I'd fully understand it. A big turning point for me was that I got commissioned to do voiceover work. I can't remember the name of the organization now because it was probably a couple of years ago, but it was basically they provided a mixture of a database and training for military or ex-military. Yeah. And the main thing was about putting a CV together. You know, this is something that they just didn't.
No, you've never done it. No. And you've
again,
never done an interview either.
And it's me-centric and all of that. And so the stuff that I was having to sort of talk about in this voiceover as part of their training, it would go with these videos and what have you. And I'm like going, wow, you really have to step back to enable them to step forward.
No, and it's exactly right. I mean, I sort of saw that really quite early on when you started helping people. Like guys like Gary Dunning, and Gary was, an amazing bloke. Who's just had an incredibly difficult journey and continues to. But the last job he was doing in the military was because he was non-deployable. So he got sent to a job which he regarded just sort of away from, you know, as a just the thing that he'd been sent to fill his time in with. And he was putting his CV together for the first time, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know what to put in it." And I said, "Well, come on, Gary, you know, you're an amazing bloke. Sort of, you know, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm a pioneer, which is a trade which has now gone. So it's a Royal Logistic Corps pioneer. You know, what are they famous for doing? You know, digging latrines, putting up tents, burying the dead, doing, you know, sort of really difficult sort of stuff like that around the battlefield." And he's like, "I don't know how to put that into anything which will help me." And I said, "Well, what are you doing at the moment?" Knowing the answer. And he went, "Well, I'm the careers officer's I'm the career warrant officer at Innsmouth, and Innsmouth is the ARC, so it's the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps headquarters. It's full of all 3 services. It's full of 18 nations. There's a signal battalion there that supports it, and it's sat in Innsmouth in Gloucester. It used to be in Germany for many years. Now back in just to be between Gloucester and Cheltenham, and he was the careers management officer's like number 2, right hand man. So I said, okay, so how many people do you look after? And he went, 280. And I went, how many job fields do they sit in? Because normally a job field manager would only manage one speciality. He's like, I talk to lots. So I'm like, how many? So he's like 14 different, completely different job career structures he looks after, people of all different ranks. All right. Do you do interviews? Yes. Do you do data entry? Yes. Do you make recommendations on people's, promotion, jobs courses, all the rest of it? Yes. How many people work for you? So, well, I've got 2 clerks, and all the rest of it. But otherwise, it's just the welfare officer and me. And I went, okay, what's the welfare officer's name? And he looked at me like I was mad and went, Jim, that post has been gapped. And it'd been gapped for 6 months. So he was the man who was, senior HR guy for 280 people from 14 different things and all the rest of it, but would never have articulated it in those terms. So our job is, I spend very little time sort of persuading the heads of industry about the qualities of service personnel that make them exceptional employees. It's the blokes I spend all of our time, sort of helping prize that out of them, and for those who don't see that path through, I mean, some guys come out of service and they're like a rocket. They might ping off a couple of things on the way, but they're always going to be successful. But for those who aren't, and for those who just need that little bit of help, that's very much where we can have a role in order to shed some light and help steer them in the right direction.
I love it. It's it really is insightful. I mean, the thing that this shows is that Mission Motorsport, a lot of people sort of think, it's for the troops that have lost limbs and all the visual things that we see. Yes, it is, but it's also for those that have been affected psychologically, but equally, as you've highlighted there, it's like, no, do you know what? It is actually for everybody coming out of the military because they're institutionalized and you need to help them get back into, and apologies, this is a derogatory way of saying it, but the real world.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's exactly right. Because there's the military is anything but the real world. So you're helping people. Our job as a service charity, we can articulate it really clearly. Our job is to make people successful civilians. So it's not about looking back. You can provide some squishy safety, security, easy things which will allow somebody who's lost to lean on. So it's very easy for them to recognize the things that they're familiar with when they deal with us as an organization, because we speak that language, all that sort of service background. So they can identify with that really well, but it's all about actually helping them not to re-enable those things. It's about becoming self-sufficient and becoming, both them and their families, a functional member of a broader society where they're drawing on that wonderful experience that they've had as being part of the services, or bad experiences that they've had as being part of the services. There's a lot talked about post-traumatic stress disorder, which we kind of know a lot about. But what's not talked about very much is post-traumatic growth, and it was you kindly mentioned it in the intro, but it's normal and natural to be shaped by the experiences which you've had. It would be inhuman if you experienced major life events and major traumatic events without being affected and impacted by them. But that doesn't mean necessarily that it's a bad thing. Particularly in the fullness of time, you actually see some people who've been subjected to some actually extraordinary traumas who become better people as a part of it, more compassionate, more driven, better family, men and women. You can really be enriched by some of the things which happen to you. And actually, a sheltered life is one of the things that's most likely to lead to a blinkered outlook. And the smaller your bubble is, so it, celebrate it, sod it. It's it can be a really good thing. And we just try and, sort of light people up. The sporting piece, the shiny bit on the front end is to tease out those who are most difficult to reach, because it's quite an intoxicating draw. The cool cars and things like that. That's what we all love. Yeah. So you use that to get them off the sofa and engaged, and then you do all sorts of stuff with them that they would never have volunteered for if they knew what it was all about. We're sort of pretty honest about it, but yeah, around that central deceit, really, the charity's based, and we are really busy as a result of it, which is nice.
Just making another note because that reminds me of something I'll bring up in a minute. I'm conscious that, of course, we've had people. Thank you for all the comments and questions that are coming in. Some that are just the usual. It's good to see. We've even got Stu Waite watching. Good man. Good to see you there. And so good. And I think I told you, James, that we're on YouTube as well as Facebook for the first time tonight. So Gerald Howe watching you through YouTube on the telly. Good man.
We're on the big telly. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
I apologise.
Yeah, we don't look any better, do we? Plenty saying dilly and everything. The birthday boy as well. And Tom.
Happy birthday, Tom.
Yeah, happy birthday. And this is good, you see. This is a new thing. I know that he's put that message on YouTube because of that logo there. Compared to, for example, if we put this up, Gary Birch, you see that's Facebook. Great to see James Cameron on CCTV. Not the first time he's been caught on CCTV. Blessings for Mission Motorsport. Going to miss the race of remembrance for a few years while posted overseas. Padre Gary.
Right, Gary Birch has been our race of remembrance padre for the last 2 years, I think.
Oh, wow, okay.
3 years. So he only just made it back for the last one because he was on the NATO detachment in, was it Estonia or Latvia? He'll remember, but he literally bombed back from deployment where he was, picked up his son, and legged it straight up to the circuit in order to get there for a race of remembrance. So there was precious little sort of Mrs. Birch time, it had to be said, who was probably looking forward to seeing him come back, and he was straight into race of remembrance. But I mean, Gary will tell you, and he's a Combe marshal of many years, and also a service padre. It's just some of the best racing. It's absolutely, it's just a mega event. But the racing is all incidental, actually, to the bit that Gary's at the centre of, which is, it's this extraordinary and weird remembrance service that's incredibly poignant. Then with a 12-hour endurance race tacked on the end of it.
And that's the key thing for anybody who's watching this that doesn't know about this. Every year at Anglesey is Race of Remembrance. Is it November?
Yeah. So unfortunately, we're kind of tied to the date because it's a cross remembrance weekend. So we can't move it to July or Porton Mayo, the latter for reasons of cost. But we've been at Anglesey. I think this is the 7th iteration of Race of Remembrance, which just seems absolutely extraordinary. It was always a ridiculous idea. It wasn't my idea. I should point that out. I've always thoroughly disapproved of it. There's a guy called John who we knew. We were both still serving when we met. He's a helicopter pilot, and he was also transitioning out of service as well. Did a lot with the MX5 kind of community, and John was about to take over North Wales Air Ambulance, so flying out of Carnarvon. So that's the air ambulance that's, dodging up the side of Snowdon in horizontal wind and rain. And said, Anglesey's my local place. And we had this incredible offer from Anglesey to have a weekend, effectively end of the year, which we could do with what we wanted. And I sort of thought, that's great. We'll do a bit of ARDS instruction. We'll go up there because accommodation will be cheap at that time. And, perhaps run a track day or a passenger event or something like that. And John went, no, we're going to do an endurance race, which just sounded like Guernsey launching a space program, frankly. I mean, the most stupid idea. Firstly, it's us. We're not race organisers. We're utterly focused on doing stuff with broken people. So that was a stupid idea. And the other thing is Anglesey in November. It shouldn't take the brains of an archbishop to work out that this is a ridiculous and bad idea. But John's persistence was absolutely extraordinary. And I think the first race we had something like 26, 27 entries. And it was just quite extraordinary. And the weather, of course, was extraordinary, and then amazing, and then extraordinarily terrible again. But then just the skies cleared completely, and there was this sort of ridiculous Blues Brothers in the church kind of moment when we got everybody together, and we suddenly realised, Christ, we literally got everybody. The marshals had come in from the posts, the staff had come in from the building, the locals were coming in order to come and stand in the pit lane together. And you had one of those ridiculous sort of, like so surreal moments. It looks like something out of Viz. Where you're standing in a racing garage and there's some desperate activity happening on one side as somebody's turning a car around in order to be able to get it out. And there are two elderly Welsh gentlemen wearing blazers making their way through with a Hammond organ that they're carrying between the two of them, and plugged it all in. And then the sun came out, and there was 500-600 people sort of squashed into the pit lane, compressed in there. A military padre, wasn't Gary on that first occasion, but he'll tell you what it's like, sort of stood up there. It's just extraordinary. And a Welsh male voice choir, and we're doing a service of remembrance, and the blokes and the girls, some of whom had never been able to face particularly something like a remembrance service, as it can be particularly poignant for anybody, regardless of those who've been to war. Pinned on medals, put on headdress, some of whom hadn't done that since they left the service. Supported each other for those who were really struggling, but that depth of feeling that goes all the way back, you still very much feel that today. It's incredible, because you very rarely get the chance to do that mindfulness on that scale, and silence, and to do it in the falling. And I've heard
it really does grab you.
Oh man, yeah, it's extraordinary. And then just everybody together at that time, and it's just this incredible thing. And then the lift, come on, let's go racing. And you've stopped a 12-hour endurance race behind the safety car, lined them up in the pit lane, and then you go, right, let's go back to it, and everything just switches on again. The marshals are back out, all the rest of it, and the race, they all go back out behind the safety car, and then the race continues. And it's just extraordinary. And I stood there the very first time and just remember being incredibly moved. Yeah, there you go.
And I don't think that gives it full justice, does it, to be honest with you? But it's just one that I very quickly found from looking online,
Yeah, it is. Now, that was the one year where the weather was, and it was fine, actually. It wasn't too bad, but it was so windy. That's the one from where Chris Harris, so that's the very first poppy car, first Mark IV race car, 1.5 race car in Europe. That was built specially for it. It was the first generation poppy car, and that was driven by Chris Harris, now on Top Gear and lots of other things, and a bunch of our beneficiaries who'd kind of built it and created it. And it was it's just the most incredible moment. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, this is wonderful. And then my second thought was, I've got to do this every year now.
Yeah.
That's it. I can't do Remembrance Weekend without this nonsense every time. And then my third thought was just wanting to throttle John Earp, really.
It is. I've said to you many a times, it's one of those ones that it's at the moment, it's a regret that I haven't been able to be part of a commentary team for it, because it just seems like a wonderful thing, a wonderful cause, really emotional. Everybody I've spoken to who's been there, I was going to say including the non-military, but I'd actually say especially the non-military.
Yeah, absolutely.
It leaves a mark.
Yeah, it's a proper thing.
No, that's mighty impressive. So, all
right. Shall I give you some exclusives, Chris? Come on, let's give the Castle King. Well, so some of the event that I've been helping out with for those on Facebook has been a thing called Revs Limiter, which is a guy called Adam Gompers, who we seem to have an awful lot of vicars. It's because it's a Sunday program, but Adam is another vicar. He was the honorary chaplain of Aston Martin for a chunk of time. He's an ex-car designer, an incredible artist. His work is just amazing, and he's currently the padre for Bicester Heritage and Bicester Motion, that amazing place. Adam pulled together a thing on Facebook a few weeks ago, which is effectively like a virtual car show, which has been joyous and has been running over the course of this weekend. And it's had, over the 2 weekends when it's run, you've had everything from Peter Stevens describing, McLaren design process, to Matt Pryor, who's the road test editor of Autocar, doing a Will It Drift, an autocar Will It Drift, in his garage with 2 remote control cars that he's built up and played with. So a real sort of lockdowny kind of feel to it, and just because of all the frustration that we're all feeling from not being able to get out and do the stuff that we love, which is really lovely. But we have a beneficiary called Jack Taylor, who's ex-Royal Air Force heavy engineer, which is engines, sort of big stuff, airframes, and all of the rest of it, and who was very badly injured in 2014, traumatic brain injury. And Jack's an amazing bloke. He's absolutely lovely, and he's one of those who's just found the most incredible progress over the last few years. And it's through things like Race of Remembrance that's really flicked his switch. And for him going into lockdown, it was particularly difficult. But it was having a chat with our welfare team. They came up with a great idea, which is the presentations for Race of Remembrance. There was one year where I managed to get hold of, I'd gone across to France and got hold of a bunch of First World War 18-pounder shells. So actually, there's one behind me. So come on, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
You press buttons. Go big screen. So that's
big.
an 18-pounder. It's been turned into a lamp. That one I brought back. So
wow, yeah.
There you go. That thing there. So that bottom bit there is the cartridge case, effectively, for that 18-pounder shell, and we polished up some of those, engraved them, and they were the Race of Remembrance trophies, class trophies. And people just went nuts over them because they were 100 years old. There was real history behind them. And we've done it subsequently again with another lot. We've done tank tracks was one. We've done some really nice sort of dog tag kind of things, which have been individual prizes as well. But it was Jack's suggestion, actually said, but you don't have a Race of Remembrance trophy, as something which is handed on from winner to winner, down through the years. So he's gone away and made one, and it's just it's the most incredibly gorgeous thing. So that was revealed on a video, which is on the Revs Limited group or the Revs Restored group, which you can find on Facebook. So you just request, all of the stuff is there, and if you search Jack Taylor, you'll find it. It'll come straight up. Jack's Mad Trophy Truck, but also this beautiful thing. But I'm doing the interesting stuff at the moment around Race of Remembrance as we're looking to sort of go into it. So we're open for entries. There's already a chunk of stuff which has gone. But we've got some plans for some really exciting racing. We've had some interesting people taking part with it over the years. So Chris Hoy, lots of touring car drivers who like to come along and sort of entertain themselves. And we'll probably be seeing some more of those again, which has been lovely. But we're going to bring some interesting people. So the Frankittis, Dario Marino,
wow.
Already, they've been planning this year's Race of Remembrance since last year's Race of Remembrance. So
wow.
Delighted to see them back on the grid, which is amazing. Go out, club race in the dark. You can go club race, endurance club racing, through the night, into the dark against, Marino, Dario Franchitti. We're bringing as well some guys who've been medically discharged with post-traumatic stress disorder after really distinctive careers, might be coming along as well. So if anybody watches SAS Who Dares Wins and has heard of a bloke called Jason Fox, then we've got a job with Foxy in order to connect him up and get him out on the grid for Race of Remembrance, which is really exciting.
Wow. So this thing that you were going, why did we get involved in this? It has just got even bigger.
Yeah, and I'm even more going, why the hell did we?
Yeah, that's special. That is incredible. And I'm going to pick up on the other exclusive while we're talking exclusives here, is that you revealed to me that there is now, you talked about the prizes, but there's now a trophy that's going to pass on year.
Yeah, and it's a stunning thing. And what I've not done is sent you the pictures so that we can get them up here. Do you think I can manage that in the background or not? Yeah.
If you can find it, and then you can do your share screen thing, that would work. How good are you at multitasking?
Well, particularly multitasking. Yeah, no, actually,
no.
I'll leave that to Mrs. Cameron to answer that one.
Well,
that's fairly.
We'll get that
straightforward. But that's going to go up in. That'll go up. We'll get it up on the Mission Motorsport website. It'll go up on the Race of Remembrance website really soon too. But effectively, what Jack's done is he's made this beautiful steel poppy out of a load of reclaimed material that's many years old, and it's just months of his sort of blood, sweat, and tears have gone into it, and he absolutely loves it. But it's just a thing of beauty. So, you've just got to balance how good the prize is with the desire to have really good driving standards and people not to get too aerated about winning the thing. But it's
on a tricky course on the edge of the coast with horizontal rain and wind and big undulation changes or whatever. It's
all of that, and a mixed grid as well. So you've got a very fast, you've got sort of Caterhams, the really quick stuff, some of the Lotuses as well at the front of the field, bloody fast, in all conditions. And then you see ones, Ford KAs, BMW 116 trophy cars, all the rest of it. And they're having massive ding-dongs as well, which last many laps, So
absolutely.
There's no such thing as a quiet lap in racing. Remember, so you're continually dealing with traffic that you're overtaking and stuff that's overtaking you as well. And that's one of the things that makes it so engaging.
How long was it again, their race?
12 hours.
12 hours from until...
So you do on Saturday, it starts at 3 p.m. and then runs into the dark at 9 p.m. But of course, Anglesey in November, you start at 3 p.m. and you're running for about 45 minutes in what could be described as daylight, and then it's dusk. So it absolutely has to be lights on and all the rest of it from that point. I mean, that said, always during the course of the weekend, you will have photographs, and you can't tell what year they're from because you'll have ones of utter horrific weather and then ones that are just breathtaking. I mean, it's just absolutely extraordinary.
Stunning.
And it's always been a thing, are we going to take Race of Remembrance somewhere else? And apart from my underlying desire to do Portimao or VIR or something like that, I think, that could be quite nice. But the Anglesey brings so much character to it as well that it sort of very much feels like part of Race of Remembrance. So it would take something pretty spectacular for us to shift it elsewhere because it is so special.
Remind me, is it a relay race as well? So in other words, they have their own cars. Yeah, I thought as much.
Well, you've got both actually. Predominantly the entries are proper endurance entries, so single car, multiple driver. That's what most things are that are racing. But we still have a relay class there, which has seen. So last year we had from the guys who run the market, based in Abingdon, just up the road from us in Oxford. They had a mixed team of a C1 and a Caterham. And somehow the people who work out, the clever things and the weighting to allow them to compete against the other relay teams figured it out. We had a load of Porsche 924s, absolutely brilliant. Sort of what's verging on a historic race car now. A load of those going around. We've had the Morgans for the last 2 years, and we know we've got factory Morgan entries and things like that running this year. That's very cool.
That's awesome.
There's some really good stuff to play there too. I mean, what were we running last year? MX-5s inevitably and Toyota GT86s, which the GT86 program's been really great because we've been putting guys on the team who have been going through our program to go into jobs in retailers across the country with Toyota. So that Jaguar Land Rover piece has grown with that Mission Automotive Initiative. There you go. Which sleeve is it? It's probably that one. Yeah. Mission Automotive Initiative, which is all about helping companies, large and small, to develop armed forces engagement schemes that work and are relevant for them. And with us, Toyota coming on board has been really exciting, Volvo, and a bunch of others as well. But like everybody else at the moment, we're sort of reacting to what's going on in the outside world. So, figuring out what the future looks like is quite challenging at the moment.
Which is a whole other area that we're going to go on to. Let me go back to the comments because I'm conscious that you're bringing these in. Thank you. And please do, everybody, keep your comments and questions coming in. And it's both comments and questions because we've got our very own paramedic, Chris Mason, evening all, absolute hero, as we know. Good to see B&R specialist cars. They got some amazing cars to get out at your Race of Remembrance, I tell you. Lots of people impressed. Yeah, Fran Elson, you impressed a lot of people with knowing it. Chris Pearson, happy to support with motorsport photography. I left the mob 9 years ago after 12 years service.
Mega. Thanks, Chris. That's great. Mate, drop us a line. So team@missionmotorsport.org, especially for volunteering.
Look at that. Almost as if
man there is Joey. Look at that. Team at missionmotorsport.org down the bottom. Thank you. Yeah, please. Yeah, drop us a line. That's always lovely at these things. Race of Remembrance, actually, Chris, just while we're talking about photography, we've held photography competitions in the past because it does tend to lend itself to things. Whether you're just trying to get better at doing sort of passing shots and tracking and things like that, we've had a load of photographers at Race of Remembrance mentoring a load of beneficiaries who are all at different levels. So some of them are just literally iPhone. Others of them have got all of their own kit. They're really proficient and they're interested in really nailing particular techniques or compositions or things like that. And so we've used Race of Remembrance as well as a kind of artistic development opportunity as well as stuff like that. And if you're interested in coming and playing at something like that, then that would be ace, particularly your background, mate. That'll be brilliant.
So there you go, Chris. Although I think I saw a message that you may not be with us now, but hopefully you're watching this back again. So that would be good. Tim Perry confirming it is an amazing event and well organised. And this one, thankfully, I saw earlier because it nearly brought a tear to my eye. My father is actually watching, and my dad himself has said, "Good evening, son. Hello, James. As an ex-military man, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you for all you do in giving ex-service personnel a purpose in life after having given the country their all." And as I say, that's, someone. Okay. Yeah. And
thanks, Dad.
So that's lovely. One of those nice moments for me as well. So that's really cool. The person who gave me the most support is thanking you for your support, James. And Chris Pearson's actually said, is this the name? So your mum was a squipper, Chris. Is that what they call the parachute packers, presumably by that? I never knew that, actually, but I guess so.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. And either that or I've just congratulated him for offending my mum. I don't know. But
I'm sure you'll find out one way or another.
Yeah, one day I will. Our very own David Vass. Sorry, it's just covering your face, so I'll bring it off in a minute. Hi, James. I had the pleasure of being alongside you, James, whilst working with Ian Salmon and Johnny Palmer in the commentary box at Croft.
I remember, yeah.
Also, on other occasions, I worked with Max Coates. I was always impressed with the coaching and driving skills shown in the Mission Motorsport races. The races were pretty good too.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, no, absolutely. There is now a thing called the Armed Forces Race Challenge, which largely has been dragged up by a guy called Chris Slater. Chris is amazing. He's a sergeant. I hope I haven't misranked him. He may have been promoted again in the Royal Air Force. He's a great mate. I've known him for many years, and he's obviously still serving. Actually, he always likes to remind me. So I've got a sort of walking reminder in my household of how long ago it was when I was in Afghanistan, because Holly was born when I was last out there. So I've got this sort of short, opinionated reminder of when I was out there. But I flew back for her birth from through Kandahar, and Chris Slater was based at Kandahar at the time. And for all I like to take the mickey out of the RAF for the fact that they have, they live in Slipper City and they have an extremely comfy life. I had a 9-hour stopover in Kandahar where everybody had an absolutely miserable time as they came back, Bastion, Kandahar, and then Cyprus, and then UK. And it's just horrible. You're in a sort of, a hangar with some NAF camp beds and some warm mineral water to drink, and that was about it. Except Chris came and scooped me up and took me, and I went to TGI Fridays, went shopping in the PX, slept in a lovely bed, had a shower. It was great, and then got deposited back literally at the last safe moment, just as they were walking out to the aircraft. And everybody who was military, including there were 2 brigadiers on that flight with me, who were just like, how do you get to do that? And you're like, no, it's important. It's who you know. So it is very important always to have good friends in the Royal Air Force. Max Coates routinely gives his time for free in order to coach the serving guys who are racing in the Armed Forces Race Challenge. He's an outstanding man. He really is. So I've got a huge amount of time for Max. He's an ace bloke. And I think what he's doing actually is lifting the standard of motorsport across the armed forces. And that's something he should be really proud of. It's really cool.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't even know that. I didn't to that level. So that's great to hear. Yeah. Right. Miles Cook has said, crazy Race of Remembrance has been going that long. Didn't seem that long ago. It kicked off. We'll join one year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is amazing. But yeah, come and join us. It's very cool.
Don't know whether you'll know the answer to this, but a young upcoming racing driver, Alfie Gendel Racing, who last year entered. I don't know if you've seen these, James. They're like mini NASCAR that the kids drive.
Scale ones. Yeah,
correct. And yet, if you go to America, they're unrestricted. They can go at like 100 mile an hour or something crazy like that. It's just nuts. But Alfie decided to give that a go last year. Won his first race and won the British Championship in his first year. So this young man, I'm 14 off the top of my head, is destined for some good things. And I know his dad, Jeff Gendel, as well. How many people are you able to help a year?
Good question, Alfie. So for wounded, injured, and sick, typically we'll hit about 300 to 400 distinct individuals.
Wow.
Plus their families. But through our bigger training and educational programs and the stuff that we're doing, we did more than 400 in a single day at Silverstone, for example, back in February. So increasing numbers, and we're getting asked to do more kind of all of the time. So as the charity sort of name and reputation grows, and things like Mission Automotive start to really pay off as well, it means that it's an increasing body of people. And when I started, it was very much those I knew everybody. That was really straightforward. I mean, those days now are, I'm scuttering about. I barely know what's going on. There's an extremely competent team of people who are doing amazing work, and that's. But it does mean that we're able to help an awful lot more people, and that really is fantastic.
And it is constantly changing, isn't it? Because I know over the years you and I have touched on areas that you thought I may be able to assist you guys, and that's just never happened, not because of the lack of desire, but just because it's like, actually, we're off doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, and that just showed me how quick and how much is going on. Amazing stuff. So well done, Alfie. Great question. He also said, let's bring that one up. It's a bit bigger. If you have something like a family's fundraising day, I would be happy to bring my race car along for kids to sit in for a donation to help raise funds on the day for you.
Tom Davis. Come on, it's your birthday.
Yeah. He can't even see now, so don't say that. It's going to be too pie-eyed.
I distinctly remember that I said that to someone. Now is the time that we need to hit Tom up.
That's true, Alfie. Yeah, exactly.
Now is exactly the time. It's his birthday. He's in a good mood. Let's make all of this happen. It's a great idea.
And I know Chris Hignall's another one that's worked with you in the past as well, and I'm sure there's a few others. And it's like without question, sadly, of course, some of the events that we would potentially be able to do things aren't even happening at the moment. A subject that we're going to come on to in a minute, things like this is impressive, and that's another reason why team@missionmotorsport.org is on the bottom there, is that drop a line, because if you are, at least volunteer ideas, I think you said, James, as well, didn't you, to some extent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you'll sift through and you never know. So well done, Alfie. Thank you, my friend. That's lovely. Someone who I think you've worked with, Tony Dixon, Swamp Thing. And certainly he was obviously our guest on the show. What was that now? 2 weeks ago. And he says, sorry, I'm late. Always the monster truck boys, isn't it?
Just, he'll be... he'll have driven over a number of things to get there, though, so you can't criticise him too much. Tony's awesome. And actually, in Tony, there was some mega interaction between Tony and Jack Taylor. So Jack's the lad who's made this Race of Remembrance trophy, but I got to go visit Jack's workshop, and he's talked about this thing for ages, which is this Hilux that he was doing. And you realise, actually, it's he's built a trophy truck, so it's got sort of 12, 16 inches of suspension travel, sort of front and rear, and all of the rest of it. It's just amazing. And these Tacoma body kits on the front and back, all of it's his own fabrication. So he's just done all of it really from his head. And this is a guy with a traumatic brain injury. So everything that's been done on that truck has probably been done 4 times, because he'll have done it and he'll have gone, no, that's not right. And he'll undo it then and then redo it in a slightly different way. And he's used it as his therapy. And it was joyous actually connecting the two of them on Facebook today, because obviously Swamp Thing, I mean, that's just the most extraordinary.
Yeah. And
Tony had immediately noticed something on the car that he's just like, you're going to have to do something with Jack. And I've spoken about it, and now what I want to do is join up Tony and Jack, so that we can just a bit of mentoring, I think, from Swamp Thing would be amazing. That'd be very cool.
They are, Tony. You heard it here first, so make sure you get that sorted. Tim Perry, sadly, I can't copy and paste it, but if you're on Facebook and you look in the comments, Tim's actually put a link to the trophy in question, which is absolutely brilliant. So do have a look. All of you saying that was impressive. And there we go. Jackie Fay saying, from the start of lockdown, Combe TV, I thought James would make a great guest. So did I, Jackie, and it was always going to happen as far as I was concerned. Always interested to hear what Mission Motorsport is up to, and very happy to support such a good cause. Keep up the great work. And by the way, I have to say to people, thankfully, is that, you know, I kind of took half advantage, James, I suppose, didn't I, in the fact that you and I know each other and I contacted. But what I have to say, above all, is I asked James in a message, instant reply, yep, when do you want to do it? Any chance this Sunday? Yep, no problem. Mrs. C has said I'm allowed to. That was the honest answer. Mrs. C said he was allowed to, and that was it. And that's the point, is that you will go out of your way to sort of like spread the word of the amazing work that you, not just you, as you've rightly said, your whole team is doing. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they are doing some absolutely extraordinary work, and it's, you know, and increasingly it's my job to make sure that the organisation is going in the right direction, and just to kind of help steer and to shine a light as well, because I think we've always been guilty since the beginning of just being very busy doing things and not spending enough time, to be honest, talking about them. So every time, you know, people come to see us or come to visit, they're always kind of amazed at just how you know. They didn't realize how much you did, or all of the rest of it, and frankly, that's because we're probably not getting our comms right. We're not getting it out there, so that has to be my piece. And also, inevitably these days, fundraising, which I think is probably the thing I'm worst at. But yeah, unfortunately, that has to be sort of part of my role as well. So yeah, I'm a busy boy, but the opportunity to come and talk, and particularly to this community. It's absolutely ace, and it is that community. You said it at the beginning. You know, we have spotted an opportunity to use community to unlock potential in individuals, and you help them to show that, you know, life isn't over, and that they can find those kind of amazing relationships with others outside the armed forces community, and as a civilian community of people who share this love of motorsport. And that's a really wonderful thing.
No, absolutely. And hence Tim Perry, and I'm pretty sure this was when you mentioned about the numbers. Wow, amazing work. It's so good to hear how much you're helping our people leaving the forces humbled. You probably understand the end of this more. Jed Dawes says dilly dilly per adieu. I don't know if that's another military.
That's very much sworn, that'd be a light blue thing. No, per ardua. There you go. Through hardship.
Fine. Okay.
That's an RAF regiment piece. So per ardua ad astra. There you go. Is the Royal Air Force, which is through hardship to the stars.
Okay. Like sure it.
But the RAF regiment, who don't get to do the bit off the ground, they just have the per ardua because they have the difficulty of putting up with penguins and green jobs and anything else that they might want to call the rest of the military as well. Yeah, it's nice to see you, mate. There you go. And that inter-service rivalry is always a feature of Mission Motorsport events, one way or another.
It's got to be, hasn't it? Although they try to be going Triforce and all that sort of thing is becoming more of a thing. My wife's a physio for the MOD over at Lynham, which of course is sort of gradually becoming more and more about, you know, multi-force, and it's intriguing and probably turns people you cold, because that rivalry is supposed to be there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. No, it's absolutely important. You know, it's really good. Although to everybody else, you know, it sounds like, you know, the Judean People's Front being upset about the People's Front of Judea, but yeah, they're right. That kind of stuff matters.
It does, absolutely. Absolutely. You'll never see Oxford and Cambridge becoming friends on the boat show. On the boat race, should I say. Chris Mason, our paramedic, being able to get TV on a smart TV in a med centre. That means it was worth getting it up onto YouTube as well, by the sounds of that. I hope you're enjoying that. Tony Dixon, I love helping out with Mission Motorsport, and that is just wonderful to see. Now, I said that I was going to come on to this, James, is that the reason Combe TV started is because, Tom and Sam's idea and me on board instantly to sort of reach out and try to be as supportive. You called it the community, the Combe community, and it's gone across the country. We get plenty of the Knickerbrook hardcore from Alton Park on and all that sort of stuff as well. And it is about supporting. That said, you guys have had a torrid time about how on earth you are able to still keep providing that support, let alone the events that would be raising awareness, raising money during this lockdown. I mean, how have you coped?
Well, that's a really good question. So, I mean, we were an unusual organisation in that for a charity is that we didn't have anybody in the charity who even had fundraising in their job description, let alone a fundraiser, until we were 5 years old. And it was really because part of it was back to that, the last thing I ever wanted to do was make another bloody service charity. The last thing that I wanted to do was to be in competition in any way or doubling bureaucracy of what's already being done elsewhere. And I wrote a paper for MOD at the end of 2011. So I came back from Afghanistan in May. I think we had Mazda on the grid of Silverstone 24 Hour in 2011, which was just this incredible sort of learning process, really. And then blokes getting offered jobs out of the back of it, you start going, crikey, this needs to be done properly. So at the end of 2011, I'd sort of said I wrote a paper for MOD. That sounds very grand. I was ordered to write a paper for MOD. So it's like, right, Cameron, stop being a pain in the arse. Make some recommendations. You know what you're talking about. Nobody else does. So do it properly. So I went out and visited the Armed Forces Disabled and Adaptive Ski Team. So I went out to just spent my own money, went out, visited them, talked to the people who sort of run that and worked out, how they organised it, how they managed to make the money work and what it was all about. And I was really sort of struck how everything was actually, it wasn't about skiing. It was actually underpinned by recovery goals. And that was a really important thing. Visited Toe in the Water, down on the South Coast. It was a lovely charity that was teaching people to sail and looked at lots of examples, good and bad. Sort of driven as well by some experiences where some lads have had a really horrific time. And some of that just through innocence and also because, there will always be people out there who are keen to exploit that, who see opportunity in other things and see routes to being able to secure funding and things like that. And also, the worst kind sort of see some of the lads who were the operationally injured ones who'd had payouts as commercial opportunity, and I really wanted to stop them spending their own money, where they didn't have to. So I wrote a paper for MOD at the end of 2011, and that then led to the creation of Mission Motorsport, the Forces Motorsport charity in March 2012 at Thruxton, and the Tedworth House Recovery Centre. They're about 2 miles apart. So it was, and that's the big recovery centre, the centre of everything. So that was that first launch was there. It was all volunteers at that time. We had our first member of staff started a couple of months later. It was a lady called Sue who was responsible. She was the charity coordinator. Who was responsible for ensuring that the records of exactly what we did with who were complete, and to do all the communication with beneficiaries. And it was some 2 years before I really came on to as a member of staff, but it had really grown an awful lot by then. And it was certainly for me getting out of that time. I never thought I'd end up doing it, to be honest. I had a perfectly good job lined up doing something else. But it's funny how these things work out, isn't it? And lo and behold, we are where we are. But the Help for Heroes, the support for Help for Heroes, the Royal British Legion, Walking with the Wounded, at the outset was really what held the charity up. We were a delivery organisation, so we were all about delivering that recovery impact. And the job of fundraising is really picked up by those with a big fundraising profile elsewhere, to be able to do that. And that loss of that big support from other charities was always top of our risk register, and it came true really in 2018. And so we've had to be quite light on our feet and work out, okay, how can we be a proper charity and support ourselves as opposed to just rely on others to do it? and a lot of that fundraising comes about through events. So in March, when sort of lockdown kind of reared its head, you're then looking at a kind of an extended period where you can't fundraise in lots of the ways where you would have done. So it's particularly difficult, because the need of the beneficiaries hasn't gone away. And while we can furlough, those who are, basically the guy who runs the workshop and the fleet, it's less appropriate to furlough some of those who are just flat out, doing things, whether it's taking a lot of our engagement opportunities. We've gone online. So, I've now got a steering wheel, which I managed to persuade Mrs. Cameron is part of my job. She doesn't believe me. I don't get to practice on it, and so I'm rubbish. So every time I go on, I get beaten by everybody, which they think's hilarious. That online offering, so we're on Xbox, where there's a PS4 community. Some of it is the organised events, which we do. So Thursday nights, and we do, through 27 races. It's great. It's just all about democratising sport and communities getting together online and having a laugh. And it's great. It's really, really good. Yeah. But of course, if somebody goes on at different times, because you'll have made friends, as soon as you go on your Xbox or whatever, it tells you who else is on and what game they're playing. And that then spreads out. And you suddenly start impacting lots of people because you provided that lightning conductor. It then just starts reaching out tentacles, and you start joining communities of stuff up as well, which is really cool. And we've just had some great times actually doing that. So it's accelerated a load of those programs. But we've been spending money on equipment, getting it out to people, and we've even had some of our, our real warriors are doing iRacing, and we're currently leading the Inter-Services Formula One Championship. So they're running a proper Formula One. It's the full 2019 season on F1 2019, and they're running the full season. I think we're about 3/4 of the way through, and we're currently Craig Tostavin, who's one of our drivers, is currently leading the championship. We're leading the team's championship and the constructors' championship as well. So, and that's against the Navy. Well, no, that's the interesting thing. So it's against the British Army esports Formula One team, whatever they are. It's against the Royal Air Force, and it's against the maritime one. And the reason it's against the maritime one is because the Royal Navy haven't really got their heads around yet doing esports. and haven't let their name to it, but it is the Inter-Services, and we're basically running a veteran team. So there's 5 lads, and they're all, one of them was missing 2 legs, one of them's missing 1 leg. They're all a couple of cans short of a 6-pack, and they're having a great time. They're just having a really good time. And then that, you end up with blokes doing Formula E on the back of that, which is mind blowing.
It is. It's been massive, hasn't it? We've just had the Le Mans 24-hour virtual over this weekend that I checked in a few times, and it was just incredible. I'm commentating on sim racing later tonight, and on Tuesday night, and on Wednesday night, and it has just taken off. And this here, much to my wife's disgust, is that I've got a little sim set up as well. But I'm like you, James. I'm terrible at it. And what Murray Walker says: those that can do it, those that can't talk about it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds about right. Look, so if I can manage to share that screen, I don't know if that's working for you. There's
I see it now. Yeah.
There you go. Here's a bunch of stuff which is on our website. That's Lionel O'Connor. And funnily enough, he's also the guy who led the Autosport team that did so brilliantly in Caterham's and Morgan's, the precision driving display in the live action arena in front of crowds of 8,500 people. And we put the band of the Irish Guards doing a what do you call it? It's like a fanfare, basically fanfare team, the band of the Irish Guards into the arena, and then did 120 mile an hour closing speed crosses, in between the ranks of them, just to sort of make it a bit more exciting.
And they nearly deafened me, by the way, because I was in the grandstand and they came up behind me with that blooming horn.
No, it is absolutely fantastic. So there's a bunch of stuff there on our website. You can go and have a look through. But there's a particularly cool video which was made by the Formula E lot, who did an absolutely a cracking job of that. Both Lionel and Gareth went through, and Gareth was the guy who did Dakar in 2013. With Race to Recovery as a mechanic, and he's an amazing bloke. He's really good, and to be honest, that's still the joy of my job. I absolutely love it because they're really cool. I'm so lucky because I get to work with soldiers, and sailors and airmen, and that's an amazing privilege. It's just brilliant. And to be honest, if I did 17 years, which felt like quite a long time. If I'd have stayed in, I think I probably had about another 15 years left to do. But I wouldn't have got much actual working with soldiers. I'd have been increasingly disappearing into big headquarters like MOD or Land Command and stuff like that. And one of the real joys of my job, as it is for anybody who gets to do motorsports instruction, actually, is that time with people, which is just brilliant. And when they're people who you're just in awe of, it's even cooler.
Yeah, I mean, to a much lesser extent, I can relate to that. Is the fact that, of course, most of the time I'm locked away in a commentary box. Yeah. But when I host things like the racing school and things like that, when you're with the people, it's just so much fun, isn't it? And you get to actually interact. So no, I can understand that. Okay, so lockdown has been a nightmare in the fact that there's not been as much there. The requirements still been there. We touched on when you and I were chatting is that there's an aim for a karting thing once we get going in some way, which that side is looking like that could be fairly close. What's this? Well,
we obviously we've taken a load of our kind of sporting offerings online, but we've been starting to look at what are the first things that you're going to be able to do as you come out of restrictions, and to be able to do our traditional model of being able to put people in passenger seats alongside people or to do instruction is still really difficult, and we know that that's still some way off. And I think it's difficult, really. It will come and we'll absolutely get there, but it's just not now. So not the first things that are going to be happening. Whereas you look at go-karting and the ability for somebody to turn up and do an arrive and drive and get behind the wheel, it's a very easy thing to do. Even with indoor karting centres, they are not small places by the nature of the stuff which they have. And it's very easy to get the hygiene right for a thing like that. There's a company called Team Sport who are just extraordinary. So they've got 36 race circuits across England, 3 of which are then up in Scotland under Scott Kart, but it's all part of the same family. Fantastic stuff. A lot of them are on electric kart indoor kind of things. And also, of course, we're great friends with Thruxton and have a good relationship there, and Daytona as well. Sat in Milton Keynes. I mean, they're great friends of ours. Actually, made the introduction to us to Team Sport, and also Three Sisters, where we've got a great relationship with the circuit. We run a day there up at Three Sisters every month for veterans. We mix it up, do different things every time. And so that gives us a total of 40 circuits. Wow. And what we are going to do in July is to run a Mission Motorsport recovery event and fundraiser. It won't be simultaneously, but they'll be pretty close together, and we'll run 40 events across the UK. Each one will be providing the opportunity for up to 5 beneficiaries to be able to participate. So, potentially over 200 people getting to go-karting at the earliest opportunity. And the way it will work is around a standard offering that typically is £35 or £40 for somebody to come along and do a corporate gig go-karting. You go along, there's a bunch of you, or you turn up and race against others to do practice, a decent qualifying, and then a proper race. A good sort of 25-minute, half-hour race, enough for you to get out with arm pump and lies. That's. You climb out of a go-kart with 2 things, don't you? So you've got like massive forearms because we've been having like grim death, and lies is the first thing that you do whenever you come out. It's like, oh no, there's something wrong with it. All the rest of it, I let you go. All the rest of it. I'd have had you. I'd have definitely had you. It was your fault, not mine. All of that. I'm certain this was an anti-clockwise track. When we started it, all of these, they're all absolutely lies. But to do that safely, with all of the right hygiene steps in place, with all of the right social distancing in place, and to enable beneficiaries to be able to do it. And normally these things are £35, £40 in order to be able to do. Team Sport, the other things we're basically doing a deal. We'll do it at £30, which is a great offer for somebody to come along and throw themselves into. Particularly, we're after coordinators, so anyone who can sort of go, that's my local circuit, I want to run an event there, I reckon I can fill 15 places. It's kind of what we need, and we'll put beneficiaries into the other ones. £30 a head, that's an awful lot of fun to be able to do for, a couple of hours in the morning or an afternoon. And what you'll be doing is you'll be helping people get back amongst it again. You'll get to meet, with the right distances in place, you'll get to meet a bunch of our beneficiaries, help them back onto the track. And all of the proceeds are coming back to the charity. So hopefully it'll be a useful fundraiser as well. But a great bit of partnership to do in order to kind of kick us off at the earliest possible opportunity to be able to give people the opportunity to get out and do stuff and help our beneficiaries. And so we would love to hear from you. And again, it's that team at Mission Motorsport email address. Mark Jordan, Joey in the office is pulling together a sort of team to do all of that. And we've got some tracks as well, particularly where we've got kind of pockets of real volunteers and folk who do stuff with us, who are already saying we can do more than one event. So that's kind of possible too. So if you go and have a look at the Team Sport distribution, or if you're a Wigan way, then that's the Three Sisters. If you're a Milton Keynes, that's Daytona. Clearly, if you're sort of Tidworth, Thruxton, that neck of the woods, then that kind of works.
Are you still looking out for more circuits that might be able to do this, or have you got your quota?
No, absolutely. We'll still be keen. There's some amazing circuits out there that play such an important role in British motorsport. The flip side of this is that we're telling a story that these things are open. And that's really important too. For organisations like Team Sport, for Daytona, for Castle Combe, for all of those who are out there providing, the best way which we as a charity can kind of give back to these places is to help them tell their story of, we're open for business. Come and spend your money here. Come and compete, come and train, come and engage and enjoy and all of the rest of it. And anything where we can use our profile in order to be able to help that and to bring some people along who perhaps otherwise wouldn't have come, but because it's a charity thing, they'll come and do it. And they look around and they go, this is brilliant. I'm going to come back here with the family, with my workmates, with whoever it might be, and do the next thing. Because we've all got a responsibility to, frankly, get things going again. There's been a tweet that's been bouncing around quite a lot today. I can't remember who pushed it out initially, but amongst the doom and gloom of the UK GDP dropped 20% in May, has been some voices going as a different way of putting that, which is to go, despite all of this, 80% of the country is still absolutely up and running. We've got this. Let's lean into it. Let's go for it. Let's support our grassroots businesses. Let's support our venues, our events, all the rest of it, and let's promote recovery, because it has to come from within. It has to come from within a mindset and a drive and all of the rest of it. And so we've got a role to play in that, and we feel that really strongly. And so we're keen to promote it. And community stuff like this, where you're talking to a Castle Combe community and that spills across into other things, it's on us, guys. It matters to us. So let's make it work.
Well, if anybody of you've got contacts, I know we got the Castle Combe karting, we got M4 karting just the other side of the M4, we've got Swindon karting just that direction from where I'm sat right now. Yeah. And that's just in our neck of the woods. And it's like there's so many of us that would love to get out. And I'm sure that, a lot of our drivers that haven't been able to get out is to get them along to this. And wouldn't that encourage you guys as spectators and marshals and everything else, and myself included, if some of our saloon car drivers, our Formula 4 drivers, our GTs, our hot hatches, if they were out there as well, and you knew that all the money that was going there was going to Mission Motorsport at the same time. What a phenomenal day. We're going to meet some beneficiaries on the day. It's just amazing. And like you say, we can't do the side-by-side. Hence, we're not even running things like the the racing school at Combe or anything like that, because you can't have side-by-side. No more ARDS license days or anything like that. This suddenly takes you away from that. You're on your own. Phenomenal. I don't know about you, but I haven't done one. I've been out in a kart since my stag do, I think. It is the grassroots basics of everything. So you're absolutely right. So I have the challenge as an ARDS instructor, where we do have some people, one of whom might look like Jason Fox, who you've got to do some car handling and control stuff with. One of the first places you can put them is into a go-kart and absolutely get them doing that. So please, great line about all of the racers out there to go go-karting. If this is an event that I am attending,
I don't want any of you there. Can we just have, dinner ladies, ground staff?
Yeah.
Chris, because he hasn't done it for ages. You're very welcome, mate. You can come along. Because I'm hopeless. So yeah, be much more my level.
I agree. What a phenomenal! I'm really excited about the possibilities there. That sounds really, really cool. We talked about obviously Mission Motorsport struggling during this lockdown. What I also want to pick up, and I apologise because I know that you're all about the we, and I'm going to talk about you for a second now. But I've seen the videos. You've been volunteering during this and been out delivering medical supplies. Is that right?
And more. So I mean, it's really one of the things when we went into lockdown. We're looking at, well, what's the impact on the beneficiaries? And it really difficult. So you have got some who actually really come of age when things are difficult, and actually they're struggling with normality. And as soon as you put them under tension, they're fantastic. But there are others for whom social isolation and things like that is incredibly hard. And people, particularly, when you're sat at home and it might be furlough or uncertainty or all of the rest of it can be really corrosive. And also, I mean, we're almost kind of over it now. We're almost immune to it, which is horrible. But the deluge of information that was coming at the front end about the nature of the challenge that we faced was almost becoming overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people too. And so a lot of our communications with our beneficiary audience has been around actually empowering them and to help them to not feel helpless, but actually feel empowered that they have a role to play, both within their own households, in the standard which they set and the exemplar which they set to other people as well, and to look after their own families. And then to look just broader than that, just a little bit further outside, to look at your communities, your broader family, particularly the elderly and those who are struggling with isolation. What can you do to lean forward into that? And whether that's through local Facebook groups or apps like Nextdoor, which are connecting you normally to people complaining about stuff, but there is a role that people can play there that's incredibly positive and forward-leaning. And then one step beyond that is really into volunteering and how can they make an impact. There is an amazing organisation. So they've just gone through a name change. It's always difficult when you're in the spotlight, but there was a thing started in America called Team Rubicon, which was all about using ex-military people as disaster responders, like very much front end in very early. And the concept of this is you get them in really fast just to kind of make sense and to make some quick differences on the ground with no huge resources around them. Those are the guys who are handing over to the likes of the Red Cross coming in behind them with big resources, big money, and all of the rest of it. But they're the ones that have that real ability to deploy incredibly quickly and to have impact and to draw heavily on an ex-military audience to be able to do it. Team Rubicon UK was then started up, which sort of UK offshoot of it, and it's just rebranded itself to Op React, RE, :ACT. And it's an amazing organisation. And those guys have been at the centre of really what is a mobilisation of Britain's veterans in support of the fight against COVID. So these are the guys who are training NHS responders in the use of PPE, or doing some of the behind-the-scenes jobs that you don't see going on, like behind the Nightingale hospitals and behind some of the NHS hospitals. They're running the mortuaries that have had to be set up in order to be able to keep the coronavirus dead apart from the rest of the system. So you've got some guys there who are doing some really difficult and harrowing sort of long-term jobs, and largely drawn from the veteran population. And so we've been encouraging our guys, to be getting involved in stuff like that, because it helps you have that feeling of meaning. You've made an impact which has positively affected the lives of others, and it's a wonderful way in lockdown. I mean, we're all starting to feel stir crazy, stuck at home and stuff, and getting out, being part of a small team and doing something really positive is good. And we've also been doing stuff like delivering to ambulance stations, so helping with PPE delivery. So that's my neck of the woods. So I live not far outside Newbury. So doing South Central Ambulance Services, doing runs for them, dropping off PPE into ambulance stations has been really good. And the weird thing is, because you're out doing that, you then get, I'm sure, lots of people enlisted got the NHS Responder app, which will never, ever go off unless somebody basically keels over in your front garden. So if you've stayed at home, if I look at it here, basically somebody would have to have a heart attack basically in my house in order for me to get a 50% chance of a call out. But as soon as you're out and on the road, it might well be that you're closest to somebody as you go through. So because we've been out doing the PPE stuff, we've also been doing a lot of NHS responder stuff. And they're all quite clever, these apps. So the more you do and the more you grade things as a positive experience and they grade it as positive, the more you kind of get asked to do. So we've got beneficiaries out there who've got sort of extraordinary profiles, incredibly busy. And they're doing it because as much as anything else, it's keeping them sane, but it's making a difference on a national scale. So, yeah, I mean that's been great. Actually, I've really enjoyed doing that and being able to share it with everybody else. I'll just there's another piece, if you'll forgive me, just showing the website, but this is something we were out doing really recently, which is the extension of one of our relationships with Mazda UK, handing them over to their Team Rubicon volunteers. That's actually Darren Langeveld, who's an amazing bloke, runs Coventry Motor Fest, amongst other things, and Destination Nürburgring. And these guys are Team Rubicon regional volunteers who are now coordinating testing routines, which are going into old people's homes in particular. We got a fleet of Mazdas out in order to be able to support. And that's great for us. It's extending a commercial relationship, a sponsor relationship from us to another service charity, but it was absolutely worth doing. That was a great day out. I think it was something like 4,000 miles we drove in order to get them all out to the ends of the earth and then collect everybody and bring them back in. And then we've just done a very similar thing with a fleet of Land Rovers, again, to going out to regional coordinators to be able to so that they can make an impact in the community. Stuff like that, amazing. It's really good.
It really is, and that's why I had to bring it up, because I'd seen the stuff that you were doing, and it was great to see, and many others doing it. And in fairness, we probably got to consider that they're going to need some kind of support after all of this again, aren't they? Because of the things that you guys are all seeing and party to. Joe Shingler says, "I wear your Mission Motorsport badge on my pro bands with pride." XRN, so ex Royal Navy.
Thanks, Joe.
Wonderful to see. Good to hear from you, Sean Wynn, the grass cutter. Great work, well done, all involved. So again, plenty of support coming in.
I look forward to seeing you go karting, Sean. Having referred to you earlier, that's Bob on.
Yes.
You look a bit quick though, wheeling. That's bad.
Exactly. He will be. And he's a good lad. Tony Dixon, the Autosport guys and girls are awesome. And also, by the way, this is some big news. We're talking about this karting, and you know that this guy is not just Swamp Thing, but he's local. He's our local. He's in on this charity day.
Yeah,
we've got to make this happen somewhere, because I know you want to be at the same event as him. This could be huge. I know you said no to this, but I think it would be good. Matt Parr, one of our saloon car drivers, nearly won the championship. Won the class. I'd be up for some charity indoor karting. Could easily get a group to come along. I know what you're saying, James, but I think that we need to have this, because it will draw people in.
That's absolutely fine, Matt. That would be a delight if you'd be up for that. Getting some people together in order to go karting and supporting it at the same time. It's kind of win-win, isn't it?
It is. You get to race against these people that you are watching. I'm commentating on. You are looking after, whether you're marshals, medics, all of these guys, and we suddenly could actually race against them. How cool would that be? I like this one. Jed Doyle, charity outdoor karting on a full circuit, not a karting circuit. Does that happen? Is that a thing? Reckon that'd be pretty cool. Only in the supercars, which I don't think we'll allow ourselves out, because they go at about 160 miles an hour. So.
We have discussed, things like could you use karting as a support event for Race of Remembrance and actually use the circuit. So we have discussed some interesting stuff in the past. There are people out there who are much more expert than I, because there are certain sort of karts that you could manage, within sound and everything else. You could potentially make something work. The big problem tends to be is that you've got to pick them up from one place, transport them all together, support them to be able to run at another, and it means that they're also not financially making any money while they've done that transfer, is the thing that's held us up in the past. But Jed, there you go, your mission.
Like it. Sean's also come back in again. Have to try a car track day one day. So he's going to go from 2 to 4 wheels. I like the sound of that.
There you go.
And Matt Pyre has responded saying, I can do that. I'd also be interested in running some Mission Motorsport stickers on the car in the Castle Combe Saloon Car Championship.
Very cool. Really good. We used to, actually, did I used to run some sponsorship in Castle Combe? I once offered to sponsor the underside of Simon Norris's Evo. I'm not sure if that counts.
No, because
that was a personal thing, I think. Yeah,
we'd never see that anyway. Right, before we get this wrapped up, I'm getting you out of this one now. I want to just very quickly go back to you, because we've talked about the amazing work that Mission Motorsport does, and I want to just quickly, we kind of have touched on it. We maybe have covered all of it. I don't know. But I've never really asked the question. You yourself were in the forces, and I know we talked sort of grandeur about what you did. Did you come out with your own challenges as a result of everything that you did and see there as well, that this has helped with you in your own cathartic way?
Yeah, I did. So, I mean, I was being treated for sort of mental health issues. So I've got that PTSD T-shirt as well, and for me it was around, and it wasn't about individual jeopardy. It wasn't sort of the stuff that I'd been in. I was on the ground an awful lot and got bounced around in some. So that last tour, that one, there you go, that one, that last tour, I was quite embarrassed because I got a mention in dispatches for it. A mention in dispatches is a gallantry award, really for, in my case, gross stupidity and failure to look in the face of the enemy. So, but it's always a bit uncomfortable when you are singled out. But it's kind of the way that the award scheme works. But at no point was I riding a motorbike. You know, I was an armored vehicle commander with a crew. So what we did, we absolutely did together. And while I was leading that, I also, you know, I had at least 2 other people with us, 3, I think almost at all times, at least in that vehicle. And we were very much of a mind, and we were doing it, you know, together, and because we wanted to do it. And so I'd kind of really struggled to separate that, any individual kind of recognition from actually what the whole had done. And that goes back to the same stuff I was talking about with CVs and stuff. You know, it's particularly a cultural piece. But that feeling of responsibility for a large group of people. I mean, I went away with 168 people, tankies. The armored group I commanded sort of fluctuated in size, anywhere between, you know, getting off the plane 168, sort of 350 most of the time. A chunk more than that for different operations and stuff, where you've got other people who are kind of attached to you. And I felt really passionately about them, because you know them and you know their families, and you know a lot of guys, you know the names of their kids, you know their expectations and ambitions and all of the rest of it, and you also see the impact that it has. And not just that, as well, on those who, I mean, our charitable articles talk about those who've been affected by military operations, and that is very deliberate wording, because I don't think you need to have gone to Afghanistan necessarily, or Iraq, to have been impacted by the things which happened there, or the Balkans, or the Falklands, or Northern Ireland. I think the families, in some way more than the blokes, shoulder a greater, different burden of not knowing, which personally I think I would find much harder to deal with. It's much easier being there doing the do than being at home not knowing, and just being afraid of the news and all of the impacts and the strangeness when you come back. It doesn't matter how much you anticipate it. It is weird as you're coming back from one very different world into another. And so that feeling of responsibility for that population of people who'd been impacted, I felt a great deal of responsibility for, and wanted to do something for them. So you know, and that led to Mission Motorsport, and it's and I mean I'm much better than I was, but I think it's important though that our organisation still has that sense at the center of it, that it would be very easy to fall foul of sort of commercial desires, or just a desire for the spotlight. If I was jumping about shouting, yeah, no, we're going to go to Le Mans, then that's probably the point at which I've got it wrong, because it's not about going to Le Mans. But if I'm getting excited about Jack Taylor as an example of a guy who couldn't be away from his missus, struggled to kind of leave his home environment, went to Classic Le Mans and was part of a crew that ran a Classic Blower Bentley that won, that for him is incredible in terms of a recovery journey. And the Bentley winning is really cool. I mean, that's ace. But you'll find us much more happy in shouting about Jack Taylor and the journey which he went on in support of his own individual recovery journey than the thing which made it happen. So, I mean, I've done a lot of 24-hour racing, both with beneficiaries and without beneficiaries. And the most rewarding things which you remember out of the back of it are the individual journeys that people have been on, and where you've been able to really help a family, not just an individual, but a whole sort of family kind of get better. And that remains, despite the fact that I'm no longer quite as three-legged donkey as perhaps I used to be. But but the core of the organisation has to be around that it has to be about the blokes. It has to be about their recovery journey, and everything else comes secondary to that.
Which, apologies for sort of like saying that, but what I wanted everybody to understand there is that this confident man that we see in front of us now, and sort of talking with great candor and everything, there is a lot more to it, and I know you will have understood. That's where I was going with that, James, is to just make sure that it's understood that this is a person speaking from experience and has been through it. And for me, just listening to James then, and I'm sure all of you watching would agree with this, is that it's about what's not said that speaks a lot. Is that it didn't take long for it to be abandoning about himself to suddenly talking about these others, and I think that sums up you, Mission Motorsport, and the support that is actually needed for the individuals, not just those with PTSD and with injuries and everything else, but just to sort of rehabilitate and retrain and get back out there on a career, which is just, absolutely amazing to see, and credit where it's due. And that's why it's lovely to see, and it's great that this is helping so many. The extra word he added on afterwards, it's great that it's helping so many. It is. We've got more to come, and this is why I say it, is that I think yet again we've relied on our military that have suddenly jumped up and been doing a lot during this COVID period. Again, I can speak from experience. We assume that it's just war. Now, war, of course, is going to be the most obvious and the most horrific, but there's so many other things. My dad in the RAF, was it 1977 fireman strike, and he was out there in Cardiff, so a very busy place, in the Green Goddesses that are not equipped to be doing this. And suffice
a load of mates who are still using those same vehicles in the was it late 90s, or even the noughties?
But the fact that this replaced the fire service, because they went out on strike, and so they were out there, and I know that we can't talk. Yeah, exactly. But the things that Dad saw and him and his team that got involved with is that, he just will not talk about it. It brings back horrible memories and all of those things. So it's not just about war. It's everything that you guys are always involved with. And the fact that you're there supporting them is just amazing. So from myself, I'm going to say thank you. You've heard it over and over again for anyone. One final thing I want to ask then, if you weren't doing Mission Motorsport, which I'm sure, although you talk about it being, why did I do that? It's crazy. I'm sure it's been cathartic in its own way as well. It's sort of self-supportive to some extent. What would you have been doing if it wasn't Mission Motorsport?
I have absolutely no idea. I don't know. I think there are all sorts of things which get you out of bed in the morning, and you sort of throw the duvet off and think, come on, I'm going to go. I think having that meaning, having that thing which helps give you that reason to be able to go about and drive into your day is incredibly important. And whatever I was doing, I would need to be. I think I'd need to be looking for that. one of the things that I really enjoy is the community piece. It's just so important, and to make people and to help people feel that they're part of something, and to empower them as well to be able to contribute to others is incredibly kind of intoxicating. So I'd have to have a jolly good look around in order to be able to find that. I mean, right now, I think the largest thing that I've been doing, apart from Mission Motorsport, has been my shed build, which I came here from doing. So there's probably bits of me look like, yeah, I've got some horrible sort of blotchy skin disease, but it's wood stain, honest.
Yeah, you're on a. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it definitely won't be shed building, mate. That's what
No. Well, listen, thank you so much, mate. I appreciate it. As you've seen, is that so many people were wanting you to come on. People like Tony already saying thank you, and I know we'll start getting a whole load more in now they know we're wrapping it up. It's been an absolute pleasure. It was always going to happen that I was going to ask you to come onto this show. I just knew I had to make it a thing before I even asked you. So thank you so much for coming on, mate, and I can't wait to work with you again in the future.
Thanks, Chris. No, it's going to come on soon. And guys like you, sort of who are out there, ambassadors for the sport that we all love. You're doing an important job, and it's great. But it's been a really weird period we've come through. But now our job, all of us collectively, is to go right. Come on, let's make this thing work, and let's get back amongst it. So. Efforts like yourselves and the team at Combe, Tom, who may watch this once he's sobered up at some point. Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything that we can do in order to help bring or shine a spotlight onto something which is being done in British motorsport, then we want to hear about it. And
obviously we want to go back. So you've got the missionmotorsport.org/news going at the bottom there. Go and have a look. You've got some great videos that James was talking about there. You've got the email address there that if there's things that you could do that you think that can assist, you want to find out more, any of those kind of things, drop them a line. Nothing's daft. At the end of the day is that of course they're going to get a number of them, but drop them a line and let's see if we can come through this together, and we got to see if we can make this karting thing happen. James, thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing you on a karting track soon. Thanks, guys.
So thank you very much for James as we move him back to the green room. You're all saying awesome session, fantastic session. Thanks, guys, Jed Daw and Chris Parr. And I know all of you agree. And you're right. It was one of those ones that always had to happen to get him on. Fantastic evening from Keith Rain. All right, Keith. Matt Parr, thanks for a good show as usual. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that you're watching. We appreciate the support. I think we've got a lot of things to think about, a lot of things that can happen, and all of us can help in our own ways. But for now, that was Combe TV episode 21. I haven't decided yet who we've got next Sunday, but really exciting. In 2 weeks' time, I think, I'm waiting for confirmation. I'm hopeful that we could have those that I aspire to be, the true voices of Castle Combe. We're going to have, hopefully, David George and Richard Davies, both on this show. Richard from Spain, David, I'm not sure where he is these days, but recovering from health issues. And we'll be able to have the true voices of Combe that I have aspire to be. And it'll be lovely to catch up with them. So keep tuned. That will probably be in 2 weeks, maybe into July. But you know what happens is that we'll let you know what's on the show. But from us at Combe TV, stay safe. Keep the gin coming if that's your tipple, whatever it is. And let's see what we can do to help Mission Motorsport. From us here, good evening.